4/10 remaining in the 5th game. Here they go. They get it to Fisher. He scores! Derek Fisher scores at the buzzer. It'll have to be reviewed. They'll review it. The Lakers are going to run to the dressing room, and they'll try to get on a plane before the officials can get over to remember that guy, the pod where we mine our memories for nuggets of nostalgia about peripheral players past and present. I'm one of your hosts, James, and this just in, fuck Derek Fisher.
Fuck Derek Fisher. Certainly no Josh Fisher, who we all love much more than Derek Fisher. Diaz with you once again, and we have a guest with us today that doesn't even need the 0.4 seconds to get his shot off. Please introduce yourself.
That's right. It's me, the very special guest Xavier, and I also hate Derek Fisher because of his time running the New York Knicks.
Yeah, I don't think I'm being too biased by saying fuck Derek Fisher. I'm saying it for a very specific reason, but I think Derek Fisher has showed in other avenues of his life that he is not only an asshole because of his shot with 0.4 seconds left against the San Antonio Spurs. That is part of the reason that he's an asshole, but it is far from the only reason. Hi, Xavier. How's it going?
You know what? It's going great. And I don't want to think about Derek Fisher because that's bad sports. But sports have been good. Sports have made me happy this week. I'm very excited to talk about them because, 1, Arsenal beat Chelsea 4-2, which made me very happy. 2, the man that I am named after, Xavier McDaniel, joined Twitter, and I quote tweeted his verified post, which was a gif of him dunking on someone, which is fantastic, saying that I was named after him. And he did then retweet it out to all his followers, which made me feel extremely happy. 3, the Jets did exactly what I wanted them to do last night in the first round of the NFL draft. And when I say exactly, I mean exactly.
I was literally going to interject with those words. I was like, dear listener, if you think he's talking out of turn, no. They sincerely did, to the letter, what Xavier Perez wanted.
I tweeted at 7:08 p.m. Eastern time, an hour before the draft. I feel like an ideal draft for the Jets tonight is Sauce at 4, wide receiver, or trading for Debo at 10, trading up into the late 20s to snag Karlaftis if he falls or Arnold Ebiketie because we need an edge. The Jets drafted Sauce at 4, Garrett Wilson at 10, and then somehow Jermaine Johnson, an edge who we had been linked with at 4 or 10, fell all the way to 26, and the Jets traded up to draft him, meaning that in the first round yesterday, they got 3 of the top 10 players on Daniel Jeremiah's board from NFL.com, the top 14 from ESPN, 3 of the top 11 from the Athletic Consensus, and all of massive positions of need and also massively valuable positions. Could not have gone better. And as a Jets fan, when your team is bad, like mine is for forever, the NFL draft is really the night of hope for you. But usually the Jets fuck that up too, and it's usually pretty apparent from the start, a.k.a. Kyle Brady over Warren Sapp, Dan O'Donnell over Dan Marino, Vernon Golston, D. Milliner, Alvin Pryor, many, many other examples. So we usually are only hopeful for about an hour. I genuinely feel great about this right now, and I am very excited.
Very impressive. It is, to be fair, the second most impressive psychic display regarding the NFL draft yesterday. I don't know if you saw Chris Angel Mind Freak taking part in the NFL draft day festivities. Chris Angel, Mind Freak, which I do think you have to say every single time you say the name Chris Angel, Mind Freak.
I believe legally.
During one of the Giants picks, he pulled down a locked box that had been suspended in the air for several hours and withdrew from it a sheet of paper that perfectly called the first 3 picks of the NFL draft. Trayvon Walker, not a first pick that everybody saw coming necessarily. So for him to get all 3 right, the Derek Stingley one too, it was something. Did he maybe switch up the sheet of paper? I don't know. He's a mind freak. But I'm glad that we get to have the second most psychic NFL draft person on the pod today.
I'll take it. But I'm not the only person who got really excited by the draft. A lot of things happened yesterday. Which one of you wants to talk first about the things that happened for your team yesterday?
Well, so, I'll dive in. First of all, for the Eagles, with the first pick, I was really hoping that Jameson Williams was going to make it to us. I assumed that was who we traded up for. So I was pretty shocked, honestly, when he did, especially coming off the ACL injury. But Howie Roseman very clearly had a plan. So comes right back, drafts Jordan Davis, who we're going to need to work on the cardio, bud. We're going to need you to be on the field a little longer. But that kind of athlete at that size should be an absolute monster on the interior for a while. But with that pick, I thought, okay, we're probably out on any of the wide receivers that I'd actually be interested in. Except as soon as the Eagles go on the clock, they come right off the clock. And to me, the biggest testament to this, and I'm going to touch on, James, your team a little bit here, is, Hollywood Brown gets traded for a first rounder, which I thought was a very good return for him. They get a fourth, too.
Emotions aside, it was good
pick.
value.
It was good value, which only accentuates how incredible value it is that the Eagles give up the 18th pick and a third next year for A.J. Brown, who is the NFL leader in 50-plus yard receptions since he joined the league. Absolute beast of a receiver. Perhaps the best physical, in terms of his strength and his ability to get up and his ability to run after the catch. I don't know if you would take any receiver in football over him right now. There may be better route runners.
DK Metcalf. Sure. And then A.J. Brown. Again, we got Xavier, number 2. Nothing to shake a tail feather at.
Nothing to sneeze at, number 2. And
sneeze is the word I was looking for before I said shake a tail feather. My bad.
Listen, I've been hearing a lot of Nelly lately. He might be making a comeback. But incredible draft for the Eagles. Love that Jalen Hurts seems to be a master recruiter because he was definitely posting videos with A.J. Brown, them throwing balls together. But, Nelly may be making a comeback, Shaky Tail Feather, who is not making a comeback because they got their asses stomped in last night, is the Toronto Raptors. And did I get a little nervous? Maybe a little bit. You're a Philadelphia fan. You're used to all this kind of heartbreak. But when we got to halftime up 1, despite the Raptors shooting, I believe, 55% from the floor, and they were out offensive rebounding us 10-1, I said, this game's over. And sure enough, we come out in the third quarter. We go on a 17-0 run almost right out the gates. Joel Embiid, who, for some reason, again, Toronto Raptors fans just absolutely hate him. And when he got elbowed in the face, this is the weirdest loser shit I've ever seen in my life. They're down 30 with 3 minutes left. And Embiid gets elbowed in the face by Siakam. And they also cheered like crazy when it looked like Harden may have rolled his ankle a few minutes earlier, when they were, again, still getting their asses kicked. We can't forget that Toronto fans very loudly and vociferously cheered when KD ruptured his Achilles.
Had to be told by their own players to stop cheering so much about him having ruptured his Achilles.
Yes, and there's been some revisionist history where it's they were cheering for the turnover, and then when KD got up and was walking off, they were applauding that he was walking off. Shut the fuck up, okay?
Horse
we
shit.
All know what that fucking was. Everything that anybody ever says about Philadelphia fans is what the fact is of Toronto fans. They are absolute fucking scumbags. They don't deserve any success in their lives. And, in a sense, I look back now on that championship that they did get when Kawhi hit the buzzer beater against us. Good for them, because that's going to be the only title they're going to ever get, and the only reason they have the title. Had to get out of there as soon as he fucking could, because Kawhi Leonard knows that Toronto is a goddamn shithole. Everything that they say about Canada, oh, they're so nice, oh, sure. No, they're fucking assholes, at least in Toronto they are. And I am so glad that we absolutely massacred that team. And it's even better that they got that little bit of hope. Win game 4, oh, gentleman's sweep. Oh, wow, we looked really good in game 5. Oh, man, maybe we're going to have a chance. And you just get your fucking heart ripped out for 48 minutes in game 6. They deserve no better fate. And I am so glad that all of those fans had that glimmer of hope. And I'm so glad that Drake brought his little kid courtside to sit on his lap so that his kid could see up front and personal how fucking miserable that franchise is. Fuck Toronto. We're moving on to Miami. Game 1 against Miami will be tonight, as this is released on Monday. Miami, I have a little bit more respect for that fan base. The worst thing they ever did was leave a game early. I don't remember Miami fans ever cheering injury. So, go Sixers. Fuck Toronto. Go A.J. Brown. Go Eagles. Go Sixers. Trust the process. Go Sixers. All right, I'm done.
Now, shout out to Raptors fans here for their dual purpose of, one, tearing down stereotypes, even the positive ones, for an entire country, and two, allowing Diaz to craft such beautiful content there. That is a quintessential Diaz rant, and I love getting to hear it.
Just had to clear out the way and let him cook there for a little bit.
It's like a James Harden step back, baby. may not be on my prime anymore, but every once in a while I can bring it back.
Hey, here's the thing. I have someone from Toronto that I'm very excited to talk about, which I realized like halfway through that rant. I promise
As long as
they
they
have
don't
nothing to
root
do
for
with
Toronto
Toronto.
teams.
I don't know. I can't attest to that based on what little we know about this person. I'm not going to lie. I wouldn't put too much money on it. They could afford to put a lot of money on it. Because I want to talk real quick about Mattea Roach. You guys familiar with her at all? Hey, everybody. We're talking about Jeopardy again. We got another big Jeopardy streak going on. Mattea Roach just became, recently this week, the most successful Canadian contestant ever. This is sadly after Alex Trebek passed. Somehow there was just like never really anyone from Canada. Right now there are always tryouts in Toronto. They are still taking people from the Canadian area. Mattea Roach is from Toronto. So after the Thursday, April 28th match, she is on an 18-game win streak. She is now 1 game short of a 3-way tie for 6th all-time, 2 short of a tie for 5th all-time with 20. But the reason I particularly want to talk about Mattea Roach, this is one of the first big streaks where Jeopardy's been releasing box scores. So I don't know if you guys follow Jeopardy on Twitter, but Jeopardy releases a box score for every episode now, which means we have a lot more very stupid statistics. I have numbers now. Like, for instance, did you know that Mattea Roach has buzzed in on 71% of clues that she has seen? 71% of the clues that have been out there, she has thought she knew the answer for. 93% of the time that they have gotten to her, she has had the correct answer. I just love that now we can have numbers like this is how much this person actually knows as you're going through the full week. It's been interesting because Mattea Roach has actually eschewed a typical strategy, which is just buzz in all the time and try and figure out the answer while you're having a moment to do it. She won't respond once she doesn't know. That's like a somewhat lower average that people try to get to than usual. There is, if you go into the non-official Jeopardy stats, which do exist, she has a batting average, which is to say just the number of questions that she answers on a given day correct, of 468. She is almost every night answering half of the questions. She has a Coriat score. That's one where they take out the daily double, they take out the final. This is just like how well you are doing based on the answers you give every day. Her Coriat is an average right now of 20,444. That's without any bonuses, what she is just answering correctly every day, which is why she's won over these 18 days 438,183, including her single game highest last night. The last night was a squeaker. Last night, to get that 18th all time, she had to actually have a very close final. She was up by about 1,000, wagered almost everything to make sure she had enough than double second place. On a question about Song of Solomon for 1970s literature, sure, I wouldn't have fucking known that one. It did give her a highest single day total yet of $42,001. She's absolutely rolling in it. She's got only 6 wrong Final Jeopardies in this entire time. 2 of them been runaways. I know this is probably boring for a lot of people, but man, it's just so awesome to see great Jeopardy streaks. And there is one particular reason we want to bring it up this week. There was a little bit of controversy for Mattea Roach, who is a lesbian, because she was referred to in some news tweets as a lesbian tutor for Jeopardy. She is just someone that is a tutor for students who happens to be a lesbian. And the charitable way of looking at the news organizations that wrote it that way is, hey, they're trying to draw attention that this is not someone who fits all of the typical demographics of Jeopardy champions. So let's try and be charitable people. There were a lot of people who just, hey, do we need to call her a lesbian tutor like we don't call Ken Jennings a straight host? Things of that nature. It's a fair point, but it is particularly notable because this is, in case you guys didn't know, Lesbian Visibility Week. We talk about a lot of women's sports here. Demographics show, hey, that is just a lot of the female athletes, and as the rights of individuals who do not fit a particular mold in this country come under serious fire nowadays, I think it is important to draw some visibility towards those individuals. So shout outs to Mattea Roach. Very good timing to be this good at Jeopardy. Like, really fucking nailed when you were going to have these particular streaks fallen this week. Excellent job. Or if that was the producers on Jeopardy, that's good cheating right there.
I love that. And Where were the advanced analytics in the 2014 college tournament? I would love to have, have those
no,
stats
actually,
for
some
all
of those
time.
statistics are up there, and I promise they're not particularly overwhelming statistics. You don't need to look up any of those box scores because they were being done unofficially by fans at the time. And I'm just letting you know, there's nothing that you need to see that's going to blow you away.
Nothing we need to see, but I love dominance just in any form of competition. So love to see that. When you mentioned that the news companies weren't quite sure how to, hey, do we want to make sure that there's representation, but we also don't want to be patronizing about it. All I could think of was Talladega Nights when they first introduced Sacha Baron Cohen's character. And they're like, he has 3 dogs who are also gay.
His husband raises German Shepherds who are also gay.
That's what it was. Yeah, who are also gay.
And love really thin stuffed pancakes.
Just say I really love really, really thin pancakes.
just break the arm.
Matea Roach, she's young, also 23. So while we're talking about people related to academics in their early 20s, I'm going to use that to vaguely, as best as I can, segue into you, Diaz, kicking things off for us this week.
Sure. So as our reigning champion from last week, I had the opportunity to be able to come up with the category for this week, which is vaguely related. So, of course, last week we talked about people who just had their extremely finite minute in the spotlight, probably didn't even get the full 15 minutes of fame. These are people who did get to achieve some level of notoriety. In fact, usually great success in their college careers. So our theme this week is the 4 best years of your life. We're looking for guys who were extremely successful in college and then not really successful at all in a professional sense. So as I was thinking of this category, I automatically had a guy in mind. I'm still a big college football fan, but particularly around the turn of the millennium was when I was really, really into college football. And this is when, USC was a great program at the time. We were just coming off of the Miami dominance when they had all of their dynasty teams. But I'm going to talk about good old Boomer Sooner. And I'm going to talk about the 2003 Heisman winner, Jason White.
Yeah, Jason White.
Jason White, a good old Oklahoma boy from Tuttle, Oklahoma, born June 19th, 1980. First of all, it was already quite the accomplishment for him to be able to make it to Oklahoma, because the high school he played for was a smaller school. It was only 3A, whereas the Oklahoma school system goes all the way up to 5A. So this is like a mid-sized Oklahoma high school, and Oklahoma already not the most populous state, so a relative small school that he comes out from. But he's able to attract some pretty serious attention. Not only was he playing quarterback at the time, he was also punting for the team. He was playing safety. He was even a punt returner, which speaks to the level of athlete that he was.
It's weird that we have so many instances of quarterbacks being punters, because that seems like the easiest way to get your quarterback hurt really badly while not quarterbacking.
It doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Randall Cunningham is another guy that did that back in
Immediately, that's who comes to mind, yeah.
I think part of it is just, especially at a high school level, if you have a good athlete, you want to give him as many things to do as possible. Like, for example, my high school, the name Jordan Harris isn't going to mean anything to anybody, but Jordan Harris is the greatest athlete in my high school's history. Went on to become the all-time leading receiver at Bryant University, got a training camp invite to the Indianapolis Colts, didn't make it, but nonetheless, the reason I bring that up is he was our starting running back, safety, and also was our punter. And there was a play his senior year where they came in, blocked the punt, and, got his leg pretty good. He stayed down for a minute, and we're like, is it really worth getting an extra 10 to 15 yards on these punts when our entire program could go down just really quickly?
What about Joey Wendell? Is Joey Wendell not one of the best athlete from your high school?
I had Joey Wendell. Now you mentioned it, Joey Wendell would surpass Jordan just in terms of notoriety. It's weird for me because Joey Wendell graduated the year before I started high school, whereas Jordan Harris was just a year ahead of me. So like I grew up with Jordan Harris. Like I played on the same teams as Jordan Harris. Joey Wendell was just like this mythological figure ahead of me.
I would also be remiss if I did not mention offensive line legend Bryant University Bulldog Paul Taylor, who got a training camp invite briefly from the Baltimore Ravens. So apparently we both went to high school with people who went to Bryant University and then almost made NFL rosters.
And I got to give Jordan so much credit. I got the lead feature when he committed to Bryant because I got the first scoop. I wrote it for the local paper. It was a big thing, so thank you, Jordan. But anyway, we digress. We're gonna get back to Mr. Jason White. Jason White does not suffer any sort of injury throughout his high school career, which is a bit of foreshadowing for you folks. Early in his career, again, Oklahoma is a dominant program, right? So you're not going to come in as a straight-up freshman and get much playing time. So he comes in as a true freshman. He backs up Josh Heupel. His next year, he utilizes his red shirt. So now coming back for 2001, he is a redshirt sophomore. He loses the job to Nate Heibel, and Heibel actually gets injured, which results in White being able to come in. Unfortunately, this will be our first unfortunately. There's going to be a few. Jason blows out his left ACL. So he does get to come in, he blows out his left ACL, done for the season. He comes back in, and for 2002, he and Nate Heibel are again in a competition for the starting job. This time, Jason White wins it outright. So he enters the 2002 season as the starter. The offense gets going after a slow start against Tulsa. They go on to a win. Jason's looking good. And game number 2 of the season, they're going against Alabama. Now, Alabama isn't what they are now, but Alabama's still a pretty decent program. Early in the game, Jason has to scramble out. He goes to make a cut, and wouldn't you know it, this time it's the right ACL. So in consecutive seasons, he tears both ACLs and has to get surgery, of course, ends up missing the whole season. Of note, Nate Heibel comes in, obviously, as the backup for the rest of the season. Leads the team to a Big 12 championship, and they win the Rose Bowl. Heibel is named the MVP. After this, Heibel graduates, the field is clear, and it's time for Jason White to get back under center for 2003 season. Now, coming off of these 2 ACL tears, obviously his mobility is pretty limited. It's so limited, in fact, that the Oklahoma offense cannot run under center plays with Jason White. Having him turn around to do a handoff, or having him do a 5-step drop, this is not going to end well. So, because of this, Bob Stoops adapts the offense to be entirely from the shotgun.
So his response to my quarterback is so physically hampered that he cannot do this fundamental task of quarterbacking is I'm going to change how the quarterback functions rather than just find a healthier person.
Yes, and in a way, honestly,
there's a part of me that's like, that's kind of impressive loyalty to the guy.
A, it's impressive loyalty, and B, I think that these Oklahoma teams, we look at it, Air Raid, Texas Tech has a lot to do with why the shotgun is so prevalent in the college game today. But really, these Oklahoma teams are kind of the first ones that show that you can be successful running purely from the shotgun. So, 2003 comes along. And in the regular season, Oklahoma is incredible. They go 12-0. They walk the Big 12. In the 2003 Red River Shootout, Oklahoma beats Texas 65-13.
Jeez.
And this wasn't some ho-hum Texas team. This was a Texas team that was number 11 in the nation at the time. Oklahoma was number 1. So this is really a statement victory. They're asserting themselves, showing the kind of dominance that they hope to achieve. So they go 12-0, they go undefeated in the regular season. They go on to face Kansas State in the Big 12 championship game. Of course, this Kansas State team, their star player would be a running back by the name of Darren Sproles.
Ooh.
Darren Sproles and L. Roberson is at quarterback for Kansas State. It's really not much of a game. Oklahoma scores first. They go up 7-0 in the first quarter. Kansas State scores the next 35 points and wins this game 35-7.
Jeez.
Entering this game, it was more or less assumed that Oklahoma they have a spot in the national championship just about locked up. After you lose 35-7 to Kansas State, a Kansas State team that was ranked 15 in the country at the time, but still should not be losing by 28.
Yeah, like
So-
a loss would have been a last-second field goal, sure. 35-7?
So there's a lot of criticism, but it does come out eventually. The final BCS poll, they run the numbers, and the computer said that Oklahoma still deserves to be in the national championship. So they get to play LSU. But before that, between the Big 12 championship but before the national championship, they have the Heisman voting. There's one other thing I want to say about the Kansas State game. Oklahoma was favored by 14, and they lost by 28. So
42-point swing.
pretty insane. So the 2003 Heisman voting is conducted, and the ceremony is held in between this. Darren Sproles does finish 5th in the Heisman voting that year. Some other notable finishes, Ben Roethlisberger finishes 9th.
Not
Phillip
Hall
Rivers-
of Famer Ben Roethlisberger, yes.
not Hall of Famer Ben Roethlisberger finishes 9th. Phillip Rivers finishes 7th. Matt Leinart is 6th. And the top 3 who get invited to the ceremony were Jason White, Larry Fitzgerald, and Eli Manning. Of this distinguished class, who emerges
Sorry, I
as the winner?
forgot that he made Heisman.
Eli
I'm
Manning.
sorry.
Eli Manning was a finalist. Eli doesn't win. Eli finishes 3rd. Larry Fitzgerald doesn't win. He finishes 2nd, which means that Jason White, with no knees and strictly from the shotgun, does win the Heisman for the 2003 season. In fairness, he has some very impressive stats. So 3,846 yards with 40 touchdowns to only 10 interceptions on a 63% completion rate. So on his average game, he won about 25 to 36 passing.
Feels kind of like when R.A. Dickey won as a knuckleballer that one year. That kind of feels like you're saying, hey, you did a really good job with this system, and we're kind of just impressed that you pulled that off.
Listen, you gotta reward weirdness, right? I'm a big advocate for that. So now Jason White wins the Heisman. We're going into the BCS National Championship game. We're feeling good. And they take on Nick Saban's LSU Tigers. It's a very defensive struggle. LSU had the number 1 defense in the country, and Oklahoma enters as the number 1 offense. This is, of course, the trial of the age-old saying, what wins defense or offense. LSU gets out to a quick start. They score on their opening drive. They go up 7-0. Oklahoma comes back, scores midway through the second quarter to tie it up at 7. The rest of the way, it's really not much of anything for Oklahoma. They do get a touchdown early in the fourth quarter to maybe give them some hope, but it was really never in doubt. Just incredible stifling defense by LSU. They end up winning that game 21-14. Now, if you've been following along, he was a redshirt sophomore for the 2001 season when he got hurt. 2002, this is his junior season. He gets hurt. 2003 comes back for the senior season. Gets the Heisman. But this looks like it's going to be it. That should be au revoir to Jason White. But it's not. He applies for a medical hardship, and the NCAA, corrupt as they may be, does look at this and says, you blew out both your knees, you missed 2 whole seasons. We're going to give you the medical hardship. So he does come back for his 2004 season. Yet again, they make the national championship game. Before this, of course, there is the Heisman voting again. There was a freshman running back at Oklahoma this year who turned out to be pretty good. His name is Adrian Peterson.
Oh, okay.
So both of these guys, as well as Matt Leinart, are named as the 3 finalists for the
Matt
Heisman.
Leinart doing this well twice, really?
And Matt Leinart won it that year. Matt Leinart wins the 2004 Heisman. People forget. So,
Man, we've Heisman winners are so weird.
Well, so I'll get to a note that I have about this after we wrap up his college career. But Matt Leinart ends up winning that Heisman 2004, and this sets up quite the showdown in the national championship because Oklahoma does make it back to the national championship. They are playing against Matt Leinart's USC Trojans. So we have a national championship game which consists of the 3 Heisman finalists. Of course, Reggie Bush was on this USC team as well. You had Lendale White, Mike Williams, Just a stacked USC team. And presumably a stacked Oklahoma team as well. Only it doesn't really work out that way. USC absolutely rolls Oklahoma 55-19 in this national championship game. And Jason White was out of his medical hardships. There's nowhere else for him to go. So this does end his college career. Now, the note that I wanted to say as far as the Heisman, the award given to the top collegiate football player, you would assume that with this being the case, most of these guys go on to have pretty successful NFL careers. You would be wrong. In fact, of all the Heisman winners that there have been, there are 11 that never played a down in the NFL. Now, the Heisman goes back to about 1935 was the first Heisman. So let me do my back of the napkin math real quick. There have been 87?
Or 86, yeah, in that ballpark. And
Roughly,
11!
So if you win the Heisman, you have about a 1 in 7 chance, 1 in 8 chance of not making it to the NFL.
13%. Wow. I would have expected some, but that's surprising.
So there was 2 semi-recent examples of that as well. Xavier, I bet that you can name one of them. In fact, you might be able to name both of them.
Oh God, I probably can. I just gotta. I'm trying to think now.
Think outside of football. I'm talking about a man that played point guard for.
John Starks. No. Charlie Ward.
I was about to say, if John
Charlie
Starks
Ward.
fucking
Charlie
played
Ward,
NFL
sorry.
too.
He had 2. Charlie Ward, Florida State Heisman, went to the Knicks. Was that 93 or 99?
And the man that won Heisman just 2 years before Jason White was Eric Crouch, was quarterback for Nebraska. He also did not make it because this is when Nebraska ran like the triple option, so it was really non-transferable skills.
That's why no one's coming out of Army or Navy recently.
Right, exactly. But to get back to Jason, so ends the playing career of Jason White, and I do mean playing career because, as alluded, as foreshadowed, he does not make it to the NFL. He got a tryout with the Chiefs in their mini camp, did not get extended a contract. The Tennessee Titans invited him to come to training camp, and he said, "You know what? My knees actually hurt a lot. I think I'm good."
You're going to need to use those a little bit more in the NFL. Like, you can't really get away with that anymore.
Yeah, exactly. He would get absolutely pummeled, so that wouldn't work out for him. But to just tear through some of the accolades that he did amass in his 2-year career. First of all, he left Oklahoma as the all-time career leader in passing yards and touchdowns. Was eventually elapsed by Sam Bradford, another Oklahoma quarterback that won Heisman and also sucked ass. But at least Sam Bradford made it to the NFL.
Sam Bradford convinced everyone he was a Pro Bowler once.
All-time bag getter, Hall of Fame, Sam Bradford. I still can't believe the Eagles got a first-rounder for him from the Vikings. It's so funny.
Insane.
But to tear through Jason White's accolades real quick, 2003 Heisman winner, the 2003 Associated Press Player of the Year, unanimous All-America in 2003, the Sporting News Player of the Year in 2003, 2-time Davey O'Brien Award winner as the best quarterback in college football, did beat Matt Leinart for that award in the year that Matt Leinart won the Heisman.
Yeah, take that, Matt Leinart.
2004 Maxwell Award winner, which is given to the best offensive player in college football. So again, the same year that Matt Leinart won, another voting body thought that it deserved to go to Jason White. The 2004 John Unitas Golden Arm Award, which again is just another award for best quarterback. 2-time Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, 2-time first team All Big 12, and then again a finalist in 2004 when he loses to Matt Leinart. Jason White, of course, did not make it to the NFL, but that doesn't mean that he hasn't lived a good life ever since then. He created a memorabilia store which sold Oklahoma and Oklahoma State gear. So he was the founder of that, did pretty well there. He is currently the vice president of sales at Air Comfort Solutions, which is the main HVAC provider in Oklahoma City. He also appears in just about all of their commercials because why would you not leverage an Oklahoma legend as part of your local marketing campaign? A touch of HEB, similar to our favorite Spurs fan here and all the commercials that James has been able to enjoy of them.
I love the Spurs HEB commercials so much.
Jason's not quite as camera friendly as Timmy and Manu in that. He's a little stiff, so I would encourage you to look up those commercials. He's also the co-founder and current board member of St. Anthony Hospital's Your Care Clinic, which sets up just local clinics to provide healthcare to those in the Oklahoma area. So, now he's just like riding it out as kind of the souped up version of the guy in your local town that still wears his varsity jacket. Living the dream in that sense still today. Didn't get quite to make it to the NFL, but still making out a very nice life for himself as an Oklahoma legend. And the stars that burn the brightest burn quickly sometimes. Jason White did burn very quickly, just really the 2 years of notoriety at Oklahoma. But, what a career that he made for himself. And a shame that he wasn't able to parlay it into any kind of NFL career. But, he was able to succeed within his own realm. So, Jason White, our first submission for the 4 greatest years of your life category. In fact, it was 6 years for him because of the 2 red shirts. So he ended up spending 6 years in Oklahoma.
Well, I also really weren't that great, rehabbing the 2 torn ACLs. So I think he probably only enjoyed 4 of them.
Well, so it's funny you say that because he actually talks about how much he would not change his injuries. So this is a direct quote that he said about it. He said, "Those dark days in the training room, in that building all alone, I think it made me a better person, it made me a better player, and it made me realize if you want something, you've got to work hard to go get it. So I wouldn't trade that for anything. I just don't reflect on those memories because, you're right, they were dark. When you're driving to the training room to do rehab, you're always thinking, am I doing this for nothing? Am I going up here and working out for 2 hours for nothing? But pushing through that, overcoming that, it sure paid off in the end." Again, certainly dark times, but from the darkness emerges the light, and that light is Jason White.
It's a blinding white light. And that's just another example of why guys should have been able to make money in college sooner, because you know what? Even Heisman winners sometimes don't go on to the pro leagues. So all the more reason to be glad that they can get that money now. Because Jason White could have gotten some good, orthopedics endorsements or things of that nature. He could have been getting on the rehab and physical therapy scene.
Listen, we see all the commercials for Copper Fit with Brett Favre and Jerry Rice. I mean, Jason White could have been a real-time application of it. I don't need to see these retired dudes. I need to see a guy that's using it right now. So Jason White could have been the lead sponsor for Copper Fit, but just wasn't in the cards, unfortunately.
Xavier, my friend, would you like to go on next?
Of course. So when I was thinking about this topic, I was thinking about, sports where college isn't the highest level of amateur sport. It's not like college basketball and college football have massive fan bases because the best players go there and then go straight from there to NBA, NFL. So when I was thinking about this, I turned to hockey because there is a big system of junior hockey in both America and Canada and even over in Europe. So college hockey isn't really where you get your best prospects from for the most part. One of the people I want to talk about had an incredible college hockey career that really wasn't matched after that, but what he did will never be forgotten by an entire state. I want to talk about Jim Montgomery.
No, when you say an entire state, I want it because there's a few states you could be talking about. I'm guessing one of the Dakotas.
It is not one of the Dakotas.
I'm just because I feel like I got a Minnesota.
It is not Minnesota. Don't worry. I will get into this.
Okay.
So, Jim Montgomery, born June 30th, 1969 in Montreal, Canada.
Nice.
Say 69.
Yes, 69.
Yes, don't worry, I got it in there.
Good.
So he played one season for a local Montreal team in 87-88 before joining the Pembroke Lumber Kings Junior A team in the Central Canada Hockey League, where he put up 154 points in 50 games as a center in 88-89. After this, Montgomery gets recruited by assistant coach Grant Stanbrook and coach Sean Walsh at the University of Maine. And Montgomery decides to head across the border and join up with the Black Bears, who just made back-to-back third-place games in the NCAA tournament.
Love the Black Bears.
Side note, Coach Walsh was only 34 at the time, and After starting off his career with 2 straight losing seasons for a fairly young Maine program that had only been around for 10 years, he then took them to 3 straight NCAA tournaments and 2 straight Final Fours. Once Montgomery gets to Orono, which is 10 miles north of Bangor, Maine, it doesn't take him long to form a fearsome group with sophomore left winger Scott Pellerin and fellow freshman Jean-Yves Waugh. In 45 games in his freshman season, 1989-90, has 26 goals and 34 assists. And Maine goes 33-11-2, finishing only 1 point behind Boston College in the Hockey East standings.
BC's like a perennial power.
Yes. College hockey is very regionalized, where it's Northeast, Midwest, and then Colorado. And that's pretty much it. No, like
Colorado's just on its own.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things you would like to think about. You know, it's hard to classify Colorado in the Midwest group with Minnesota, Michigan, the Dakotas. But outside of the upper Midwest/Northeast, the only programs to have won national titles in the 75 years of NCAA hockey tournaments have been Denver and I think Colorado College. So Maine goes 33-11-2, finish only 1 point behind Boston College, and they get an at-large bid to the NCAA tournament where they crush Bowling Green 8-5 and 5-2 in the first round before losing in the quarterfinals to Wisconsin over in Madison 7-3 and 4-3. Montgomery is named to the Hockey East All-Rookie team this freshman year. During his sophomore season, he really puts it into next gear. In 43 games, he scores 24 goals and gets 57 assists for a total of 81 points and nearly 2 points per game, 5th best in the country. Although technically second best on his own team behind Waugh, who had 1 more. And so he's named second team AHCA All-American for the East because they split All-Americans up into East and West thanks to the regionalization. West is essentially the Midwest, East is the Northeast. And so he's second team All-American and then also second team All-Hockey East as Maine once again finishes 1 point behind Boston College with a record of 32-9-2. Despite not winning their conference, Maine gets the 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, earning a bye to the quarterfinals. They decisively beat Minnesota 4-0 and 5-3 to earn a trip to the Frozen Four in St. Paul. They do come up just short as they fall in the semis to eventual national champion Northern Michigan 5-3.
Was it then and is it still now single elimination in the Frozen Four? I've never been entirely certain if it was that or like series of 3.
Yes,
okay, it is just single elimination.
It was single elimination. So it was first 2 rounds were double on campus sites, and then the Frozen Four was single and has been single at least as far back as I looked. But with the returning trio of Montgomery, Pellerin, and Waugh, plus Garth Snow in goal, Maine was considered a really heavy favorite to win it all in 91-92. Behind the 3 of them, once again combining for 180 plus points, Maine steamrolls through the regular season, only losing 3 games. Although later, the NCAA does forfeit 13 regular season games because Air Force transfer Cal Ingraham was deemed not yet eligible to play, technically, until the calendar turned. So as far as the NCAA's record books are concerned, they did start the season off with 15 consecutive losses because none of their wins counted until Cal Ingraham was eligible. This is
so silly.
So this is part of a much larger crackdown that the NCAA had on hockey later on in the mid to late 90s because they really hadn't paid a lot of attention previously. And so there was a lot of players coming from other professional leagues and transferring to other schools, and there weren't great rules on what was and wasn't allowed. What rules they did have weren't widely enforced. So Maine gets in trouble a couple times, but they're not the only one to do that.
Are these like they were vacated later or during that season, regardless of the outcome of each game, they were being told that it was essentially counted as a loss because it was not a valid game? It was
3 to 4 years later. There was investigation in like 96 into 97 that does actually lead to the suspension of Coach Walsh for half of the 95-96 season and half of the 96-97 season. But from what I saw, it was really small stuff. Like there was too many phone calls or like letting players use long distance phone calls and stuff like that, or like allowing them to eat meals, things like that. So, it wasn't anything like too crazy, but they just started cracking down because they really hadn't paid much attention. Who knows what the NCAA does? I mean, we talked for hours about their enforcement. From everything I saw, like the NCAA commended the fact that Maine was like really open about everything and cooperated completely. So it wasn't anything too crazy.
Fuck the NCAA. Continue.
Yeah, it's still a terrible vestigial organ of a parasitic organization.
I mean, I agree. So, who cares what the NCAA books say?
Yeah.
Maine wins both the Hockey East regular season title for the first time since Montgomery arrived, and also the Hockey East tournament with a 4-1 win over New Hampshire. Montgomery, second team All-Hockey East again. Scott Pellerin wins the Hoagie Baker Award, and Maine once again gets the 1 seed and a bye. So this is the first season that the tournament gets switched to single elimination for all rounds with predetermined regional sites instead of campus games. Their first game, they faced Michigan State, and despite an early goal from Montgomery giving them the lead just 6 minutes in, they do fall 3-2 to Michigan State. So now we're in his senior season of 92-93. With the departures of Pellerin and Waugh, who both graduated, along with fourth highest scorer Brian Downey, Maine was expected to take a very large step back. People didn't expect much from them. However, they did still have Montgomery at center. Cal Ingraham was looking pretty good. They had a two-headed monster tandem of Garth Snow and Mike Dunham in goal. And this year, they happened to be joined by a highly talented one-and-done freshman from North Vancouver, Paul Correa.
I don't recognize that name.
You don't. So Paul Correa, his most famous moment probably was when he was with the Ducks and they played the Devils, and I want to say the 2003 Stanley Cup Finals. And he gets absolutely taken out by like a blindside hit. He's like out cold on the ice in the first period. He ends up returning to the game. Like he clears whatever protocols they had at the time, which probably is not as stringent as the ones today. But he does clear those protocols, and he comes back in. And your boy, Gary Thorne, the Orioles announcer. Is he still announce
Love
the
Gary
Orioles?
Thorne. No,
Gary Thorne is part of
Mets
this
now.
story. Gary Thorne will be part of this story later, too. I love this.
Gary
This is
Thorne's with the
great.
Mets now, just like Buck Showalter.
Well, your former boy, Gary Thorne, has an incredible call for Paul Correa, ends up scoring a goal to put the Ducks up by 2 goals, and they end up going on to win that game. And it's one of my favorite calls in hockey history. He says, "Off the floor, Paul Correa!" It's an all-time great call. I encourage you to look it up. But anyway.
Yeah, because this is definitely right before, if it was 2003, before I came in, because I come into hockey specifically the year after the lockout.
Yeah,
fair,
so
that makes sense.
Paul Correa is extremely, extremely good. He had 989 points in 989 NHL games, with the number 4 overall pick the very next year, and has an absolutely wild story where he's half Japanese, and his father was actually born in an internment camp when Canada forcefully relocated Japanese citizens to British Columbia to be interned during World War II.
Not great.
Korea's story is wild. Extremely talented player. Had a lot of concussion injuries, but that's later down the line. What we have to talk about now is that with Montgomery as the captain and most senior player leading the team, this attacking trio of Montgomery, Correa, and Ingraham absolutely blitzed everyone. Correa sets a freshman record that still stands with 100 points. Ingraham gets 85 points, including an NCAA leading 45 goals. Montgomery shatters his previous high mark with 95 points on 32 goals and 63 assists. They opened up the season by outscoring their first 6 opponents by a total of 63-12. And their first 2 games were against the number 10 ranked team. They were not facing bad teams here. Over the next few months, they win the Thanksgiving Great Alaska Face-Off, beating Yale, Bowling Green, and Alaska Fairbanks, outscoring them 17-6 in 3 games. Winning the Great Western Freeze-Out right before Christmas over traditional powers Western Michigan and defending champions Lake Superior State, even without Correa and freshman twins Peter and Chris Ferraro, who were overseas at the World Junior Championships. They blitzed the Cleveland Hockey Classic with a 9-4 win over Ohio State, followed by a 6-2 win over Bowling Green. And then they win the Dexter Hockey Classic, beating Miami in the semis before demolishing Brown 12-4 in the final. By the end of January, they're 26-0-2, with the 2 ties being a 4-4 thriller against Providence, which was the second game of the season, after they had beat Providence 9-3, and Clarkson, who they tied 4-4 and then beat 6-0 the very next day without allowing a single shot on target in the entire first period.
I've never heard of Clarkson before, like 5 seconds ago.
Clarkson is, I think their only D1 sport is hockey, but they're pretty good.
I love how good all the Ivy Leagues are at hockey. I like that like Yale and Brown are consistently up here.
Princeton has a good team.
Clarkson had
Penn
made
doesn't have a
Frozen
team
Four
at all.
2 years previous to this. So Clarkson is a good team. Just like Union, who has won a Frozen Four in the past 10 years. I bet you 99% of Americans couldn't say where Union College is.
Consider me one of the 99%, man.
It's in Schenectady.
Schenectady?
Yeah, it's a New York team. That's how I know.
Wow.
They would finish the regular season 35-1-2, with the only loss coming in the 33rd game of the season, a 7-6 overtime loss against Boston University. In the locker room, an angry Wall said to the team, quote, "It's not how hard you fall, it's how fucking fast you come up, and thank God we're playing them tomorrow." They respond to this by beating BU 6-1 the very next day.
There you go. Lived up to his words exactly.
They end the season on a 5-game winning streak where they scored 32 and only conceded 7. Their dominance continues in the Hockey East tournament as they scored 27 more goals in just 4 games, beating Northeastern, UMass Lowell, and then Boston University 5-2 in the title to become the first team to win back-to-back Hockey East tourneys. Montgomery scores 2 goals in the final and is named the William Flynn Tourney Most Valuable Player. Montgomery picks up his second team All-American Award, finally is named first team All-Hockey East, and was one of the 10 finalists for the Hoagie Baker Award. With a record of 39-1-2, Maine gets their 3rd straight 1 seed in the tourney.
Can you say that record one more time?
39-1-2.
I also love the Hoagie Baker Award. It's a great name.
Hoagie Baker.
Hoagie. I thought it was Hoagie. I was like, oh wow.
No, that'd be great too. Hoagie Baker.
So there was one single game that entire season where they finished regulation losing.
Well, so the way it was you had 1 overtime, and if overtime ended tied, it was a tie. They had 2 ties where they ended regulation tied, and then no one scored in the overtime, and another where they ended regulation tied, and then lost in overtime. Okay. They never had a regulation ending with them losing during this season. So, this year they're on a mission. They faced Minnesota in the quarterfinals, and after an early scare and a power outage, which delayed the game after the first period, Maine brushes past them 6-2, with Montgomery scoring the opener, then scoring another goal in the second period to make it 3-0 after Minnesota had surged following the power outage, and then assisting on a shorthanded goal by Paul Correa to make it 4-0 and really seal the deal. They then meet Michigan in the Frozen Four national semifinal at the Bradley Center in Milwaukee. They get off to a slow start. They're down 2-0 early, but they pick it up, try to come back, but they're still down 3-2 entering the third. In a moment of major controversy, on a wraparound attempt, a Maine player, Patrice Tardif, scores to tie the game at 3. But at the same time he puts the puck in the net, the Michigan defender who was trying to track him crashes into the back of the net and lifts up the right side of the net. Tardif is wrapping around from the right to the left, slides the puck into the net, and then it slides out the side where the net had been lifted up. So it goes into the goal and then just slides out the side where the net had been lifted up. And the refs say, no goal.
This is obviously way before any kind of video review.
Go to the VHS tape review.
Oh, yes, it's 100%. It was an absolutely clear goal, and the refs just totally missed it. But I watched 2 different documentaries and a 30-minute highlight package of this entire Frozen Four. Even on 90s VHS, it was extremely clear. But Montgomery and Maine are not going to be deterred. With less than 4 minutes to play, Montgomery gets the puck off a face-off, draws 2 defenders and the goalie towards him, and is able to slide the puck right across the face of the net for a tap-in for Cal Ingraham. Maine goes on to win in overtime when Tardif, while on his back, is able to slightly deflect the puck into the unheralded defenseman Lee Saunders from England for the winner. By the way, Saunders was a Geordie who was from a shore town 10 minutes
Howie.
downtown Newcastle.
Howie the lads. And doing the tune. Love it.
So with this goal, Maine is on their way to the championship against defending champions Lake Superior State.
Yeah, okay, sure.
As opposed to Lake Superior University, Lake Superior State.
And don't sleep on Lake University A&M.
You know what? Lake Superior State, can you guess what state they are in?
New York?
Do you know where Lake Superior is?
It's the biggest one. It's not Huron. I'm mixing it up with Huron. I'm sorry. Probably Michigan?
Yes, they're Michigan. Lake Superior State's good. They have 3 national titles. And again, they are the defending champions at this point. And I will tell you, in the next year, they do also win a title, beating Boston University 9-1 in the championship. Lake Superior State.
Good for Lake Superior State. Hey, fuck yeah, man.
They're pretty good at hockey. The day before the championship, the Hoagie Baker Award is announced. It does go to Paul Correa, the first freshman to ever win it. But he asks that Montgomery be allowed to be with him on the podium and spends much of his acceptance speech talking just about how much Montgomery had done to support him. And they hold the trophy up together, which is really cool.
Love that.
Recognize your roots.
And one of the things to remember is that when this season started, Montgomery is 23 years old, by far the oldest player on the team and the captain, and Correa is 17, and the youngest player.
So that's just an older brother.
There is a lot in this acceptance speech about Big Brother. Correa was choking back tears a lot. You could tell how much he really thought that. So now we get to the title game. Maine scores 2 early goals, including a goal from Tardif just 28 seconds in. But Lake Superior regroups, scores late in the first, and then they completely dominate the second period with 3 more goals, meaning that it's 4-2 heading into the last intermission. This is when Captain Jim Montgomery really takes over. In the locker room, Montgomery went to rally his team, and he told them, "We are coming back to win." This was caught on camera, so we know this happened, not just an exaggeration. They get back out of the ice, and he puts his money where his mouth is.
Lake Superior Smith fighting for it, along with Correa. Correa winning the Hoagie Baker Trophy, is centering pass, a score! And back we go the other way, a 3-on-2 developing for the Black Bears, trailing by a goal. Chris Imes losing it in front. Pass just can't connect, and a couple of competitors were burying the boards, and a score! Maine has tied it up. Correa breaking it, look at these scores!
He scores a 5-minute natural hat trick to give Maine a 5-4 lead. Despite a nervy moment where Lake Superior hit the bar with less than a minute left, they hold on to this lead, and Maine wins their first ever national championship in any sport.
This 23-year-old's just like, I'm winning a title before I leave college.
He put the team on his back. 5-minute natural hat trick. Actually, 4 minutes and 35 seconds, which is the fastest hat trick in a championship game ever. Montgomery is named to the all-tournament team and also named tournament most outstanding player.
Hey, big-time players show up in big-time games.
Watching the highlights is really funny because the first 2 goals, the commentators thought it was Cal Ingraham who scored. So they're like, Ingraham! Oh, wait, it's Montgomery, yay! So in some of the shorter cuts, they cut out everything that happens exactly right after the goal to not get the, oh, wait, we mistook who scored for it.
Cowards.
When he scored his third, the commentator was very, effusive in his praise.
Paul Correa, deserving recipient of the Hoagie Baker Award, but Jimmy Montgomery, the most valuable player on the team, no question.
So overall, they go 42-1-2, the most wins ever by a D1 hockey championship team to this day. They outscored their opponents 292-108 and are widely considered either the best or the second best college hockey team of all time. It's really only a debate between them and the 1969-70 Cornell team, which did go undefeated, but also played 15 less games. In his career, Montgomery ended up with 301 points, which is most in school history, Also fourth in NCAA history. And the only people that are ahead of him are guys who played in the very free-scoring 70s. The only person who played more recently than Montgomery, which again is the past 20 years, and is even within 50, is Martin St. Louis, a Hall of Fame caliber player.
That's a pretty good comp.
It's really cool. At their championship ceremony back home, someone was holding up a sign that said, Korea equals Hoagie, and then Jimmy equals God.
I love some classic hyperbole on a sign. I mean, who doesn't?
The state of Maine loves this team. The amount of stuff I found on just how much Maine is in love with them is staggering. But it's not too crazy when you think about it. Like, no top-level professional sports in Maine.
Yeah.
Their only D1 sport is hockey.
And this is the greatest hockey team of all time.
Yes.
Free lobster for life, anywhere.
Fun fact for you, James, that was kind of spoiled earlier. Gary Thorne, who is a University of Maine graduate and a Bangor native, got his start as the radio play-by-play for the Maine Black Bears and narrated one of the documentaries that I watched on them where they were given locker room access for the entire 92-93 season. There's an incredible scene where Thorne talks about analytics and says, quote, players are evaluated with video and modern statistical science as the program seeks perfection. And it's overlaid on a scene of looking at like one of those little 10-inch TVs and then two giant brick computers next to each other hooked up to a massive printer that looks like a Scantron machine.
Does it have the holes on both sides of the paper?
Yes, it does.
Oh, that's the good stuff.
So good. And this was one of those 90s documentaries. So the amount of like mullets, mustaches, talking about losing teeth in bar fights, like it was phenomenal. It was exactly what you would expect from a Maine hockey documentary from the 90s. Like I said earlier, NCAA does take a look at some of these things in the future. There was talk that they might try to take away, in air quotes, this title because goalie Mike Dunham had got a $2,000 stipend from USA Hockey when he competed in the Olympics. But the NCAA found out that they paid his mom directly. He had no idea about it, and she only accepted when USA Hockey told them specifically that it wouldn't affect his eligibility. So they cleared them of all wrongdoing, so the title stands.
They didn't want to incur the wrath of the state of Maine.
Those Mainers can be pretty dangerous. So in 1998, Montgomery gets inducted into the University of Maine Hall of Fame, gets his jersey retired, and because we like well-rounded people, he also won the school's Dale Lick Academic Achievement Award. He's also one of those guys who gets inducted a second time into the Hall of Fame when he gets inducted in 2017 as a member of the entire 1993 men's hockey team. I love that. I love when people are in the Hall of Fame more than once. Big fan of that. But because part of this is about not really doing much after college, you have to, say quick that Montgomery, not drafted by any NHL team, does get signed by the Blues, plays 60 games, but gets traded to the Canadiens, his hometown team, where he plays 5 games before getting cut. Signs with the Flyers, plays for like 2 months, doesn't do much, but is credited with coming up with the nickname Legion of Doom for the Flyers line of Eric Lindros, John LeClaire, and Mikael Renberg. So, the impact that he made there, not on the ice, but still somewhat important. And
left a mark.
He only ever played 30 more NHL games with the Sharks and Stars, but mostly bounced around the AHL with the Hershey Bears, Philadelphia Phantoms, Manitoba Moose, Kentucky Thoroughblades, Utah Grizzlies, with some short stints with the Cologne Sharks of the German League, Ufa in Russia, and the Missouri River Otters of the UHL before retiring. But with the professional game not working out, he does go back to college, where he is an assistant coach, ends up as the head coach of the Denver Pioneers, where in 5 seasons, they go 125, 57, and 26, winning 3 conference tournaments, making the NCAA tournament all 5 years, including 2 Frozen Fours, and leads his 2016-17 team to a 33-7-4 record and an NCAA title, giving him both one as a player and as a head coach. The college game treats Jim Montgomery very well.
Just stay specifically there, though.
Yes, the second you leave, bad things happen. Don't want to talk about his time with the Dallas Stars. Things didn't go great for him up there. Just stay in college, and all the good things will happen for you, Jim.
Well, it's perfect. I mean, that fits the category to a T. I love the story. I guess there's just one more thing that we need to do, and that's bring up my guy, who's definitely not going to get any blank stares. Do you guys remember Sam Bowie?
Sam Bowie. Everybody's
Bowie.
favorite number 2 pick.
Everyone's favorite number 2 pick. The number 2 pick will be the climax. I promise. We will finish with that. But real quick, let's just make sure we can set the stage for that number 2 pick. Sam Bowie from Lebanon, PA, which apparently is named after the country. That's at least what the city thinks. There's no official record of why they named it that, though. No one has definitive concrete proof of why it is named that. It was originally named after some old guy that founded it, like Gwinsville or something. Now it's Lebanon, PA, which is home to, you guys know that red and blue pasta brand, San Giorgio?
Yes.
Yeah, that's founded and exclusively produced in Lebanon, PA. The other products out of Lebanon, PA are Lebanon bologna. It's not a true bologna. It's not a cured pork product. It's a cured beef product instead. But they do drop a 150-pound log of Lebanon bologna every year for New Year's Eve. That's their big ball drop.
What do they do with it after that?
Then they, I think, give it to the firemen to eat. I believe that's what I read. I didn't go too deep into the Lebanon bologna lore, to be completely fair, because I wanted to focus on the product of Lebanon, PA, Sam Bowie. Parents Ben Bowie and Kathy Sammy Bowie, nicknamed Sammy. I guess that was some family thing. Ben Bowie had played for the Harlem Magicians, not the Globetrotters. This was a group of Globetrotter expatriates initially who founded a different Harlem Globetrotters. I cannot confirm whether they had blackjacks or hooker, but they did for 6 years have Ben Bowie. And so he teaches his son growing up. By the time Sam Bowie gets to Lebanon High School, where he's playing for the Cedars, their mascot is Rooty, the cedar tree, not Rudy. It is Rooty. You may actually have seen Rudy the cedar tree before if you have watched Hulu's Behind the Mask. He was the high school one that was featured in season 1 of Hulu's mascot documentary Behind the Mask. So anyway, the Cedars is the team that Sam Bowie stars.
Do you look anything like the Stanford Cardinal?
It's pretty close. It's a big felt tree. You know, it is what it promises. It's a big old cedar tree. And the Cedars are phenomenal with Sam Bowie. His junior year is maybe the highlight of his state career. They do go all the way to the state finals. They lose to Shenley, a Pittsburgh high school, and they lose literally by 1 point, 52-51. Sam Bowie to this day says that is actually the loss that, if he could get any one back, he wants back the most. So coming into his 79 senior year, high expectations for this star of this state runner-up. He is kind of the whole season parallel to a contemporary big man of his. He is this point, he's around 7 foot by the end of high school, and he is compared to Ralph Sampson, who is 7'3" at this point from Virginia. Ralph Sampson will also be going on to be a very highly decorated big man, and the two of them, also to a lesser extent this year with Steve Stepanovich, are the 3 big men. They're featured on a Sports Illustrated cover. It's the 1 and 2 between Sampson and Bowie for much of the year as who's going to be the national player. Bowie is decided as the national player, and then they get a couple chances to litigate that a little bit with their play, so to speak. They are first both featured in one of the earliest McDonald's All-American games, East-West. They're on the same team for this one. Some people on this roster, in addition to those 3, Bowie, Sampson, and Stepanovich, we've got Byron Scott, James Paxson, Isaiah Thomas, James Worthy, and Dominique Wilkins. Absolutely loaded McDonald's lineup. Yeah, it is also a very similarly loaded lineup later that same year, about a month later, when they have in March, on March 29th, the day after the 3 Mile Island incident, a game in D.C. called the Capital All-Star Game. Apparently, I don't know if it still runs, but at the time, it was DMV area All-Stars versus just all the All-Stars from the rest of the country. So this time, they're on different teams, Bowie and Sampson. Sampson from Virginia on the DMV team. And the day after 3 Mile Island, Sampson is the one that goes nuclear. He is the one that puts the team over. And the Capital All-Stars do end up winning this game. Washington Post reports on it, said that Sampson was absolutely dominant. In fact, here is a quote from one of the coaches, Jock Sutherland, who is one of the U.S. coaches, so on Bowie's team. He's the most dominating human being I've seen on the basketball court. If I was the Lord, I'd hide him away and save him for a team in heaven. So pretty high praise for Sampson. And this is again in a year that Bowie one national player. So, hey, you know what? Just as we're saying with the Hobie Baker, not necessarily lining up with who's going to come up in the end. There is a guy who's finishing a little bit more than Sam Bowie here. But nonetheless, Sam Bowie, highly recruited, is going to end up going to Kentucky for his college career. And he's an absolute star as a freshman. 12.9 points, 8.1 rebounds, 2.1 blocks. He is leading the team in blocks and rebounds at that time, and second in points. All as a freshman. Kentucky goes 29-6. They get to the tournament. This is the 48-team tournament. So they beat FSU in the first round, 97-78. Then they lose to Duke the next round in 55-54 loss. Unfortunately, Bowie fouls out pretty early on, and that's a big factor in it. But, it's pretty good freshman year. Enough to get him on the 1980 Summer Olympics team. He's going to go to the 1980 Summer Olympics, except there's a problem. Do you guys know what the problem with the 1980 Summer Olympics is?
Boycott.
Yes, they were to be held in Moscow, and in late 1979, specifically Christmas Eve 1979, the Soviet Union does invade the country of Afghanistan, and when peace talks break down prior to the outset of the Summer Olympics, the United States is one of 65 countries that fully boycott the Olympics, along with 16 other partial boycotts. So they don't go to the Olympics that year. There are some track and field things. They do something called the Liberty Bell Classic in Philly, just to let all the athletes do something. The basketball team instead goes and does a tour against NBA All-Stars, in which they go 5-1. And Bowie actually is, once again, second on the team in points with 11.6, first on the team with blocks, 2.3, and he is first on the team with rebounds, 6.9. Nice.
Very nice.
So already he's got this phenomenal freshman season. He's been to the Olympics, sort of. In fact, all 461 delegates of the U.S. Olympic team are given congressional gold medals, which is an honor that Congress can give you that has nothing to do with the gold medal, but they do give them this. It was unclear for 20 years whether they were real. In 2007, Congress actually had to confirm, yeah, no, they got real congressional gold medals. That wasn't just a fake thing that someone did to be mad at Moscow. And now he's going to come back for his sophomore year. He is this time first on the team, 9.1 rebounds, first on the team, 2.9 blocks. He's going to go ahead and lead the team in points this time. He's tired of being second, 17.4. He is a third-team AP All-American. They're the number 2 seed in the tournament, and they go up against the University of Alabama, Birmingham, the UAB Blazers.
Blazers.
Go Blazers.
Yes, and Sam Bowie loses to the Blazers, the 7-seed Blazers. They lose by a score of 62-69. Nice. It is unfortunate that he goes out that way, and a little bit potential in what it's maybe saying for his future. Another thing that is perhaps an omen for his future is that after that, it comes out that in the second to last game of the season, he had gone up for a dunk, and when he came down real bad on his left leg. In fact, at first they're just we'll ice it down. They think it's shin splints. They think they just need to rest it up. Nope. After a little bit, they realize, oh no, you have a full hairline fracture of your left tibia. We need to go ahead and deal with that. And then it doesn't heal correctly, and he has to spend 44 weeks in a cast. And then he has to get a bone graft. And all of this has now wiped out the junior and senior years of Sam Bowie. This tiny little stress fracture in his left tibia has been mismanaged, has been misdiagnosed, has just totally gone wrong, and now he's at the end of his 4 years. Except wait, he does love college, and just like Jim Montgomery, and just like Mr. White, he's I don't want to leave college yet. He gets a redshirt exemption for one of those years and is able to come back for a 5th season with Kentucky, and they have another phenomenal year. He is not quite the leader that he was then, because there's another good big man on the Kentucky team at this point, Melvin Turpin. They're one of the first lineups that I can find instance of being referred to as a Twin Towers lineup. This is the 1983 season, and as far as I can tell, at least on large scales, this is the first one that we're talking about, because it's even before some people in Houston are going to do this, and some people in New York and some people in San Antonio are going to do this. This Twin Towers lineup, very successful. They once again are going to get to the tournament, and this time they're going to go on an even better run. It is up to 53 schools now. They're going to beat BYU in the first round, absolute shellacking, 93-68. They're going to beat rival Louisville, 72-67, the second round. Then they're going to beat Illinois, for a 54-51 win that takes them to the Final Four. Fortunately, in the Final Four, he is going to run into another pivotal big man as he continues to tangle with all of these guys. He does lose to Patrick Ewing's Georgetown, the eventual champions, 53-40. It is a rock fight and just a kind of ugly basketball game. I watched a little bit of the highlights and, oh man, that's not super fun to watch. Glad that the game has evolved a little bit more.
The next year national championship was even uglier when 8 seed Villanova beat that same Georgetown team. And their basic tactic was, let's just hold the ball as long as possible so Georgetown doesn't get it. So I think
Which is, hey, a solid strategy.
And I think this was before the advent of the shot clock in the college game, at least.
This was the reason for the shot clock, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And they admitted if the shot clock existed, they would have gotten blown out. But the shot clock didn't exist at the point, so they just held the ball.
Unfortunately, against Georgetown, that loss is the end of his college career. And we're in a topic where that college career has now been the highlight. And we're going to enter the 1984 draft, but to explain a little bit of why things go so wrong so quickly, we need to real quick go to Indiana in 1981. Indiana just had last season its first ever in franchise history winning record under head coach Jack McKinney. If you've been watching Winning Time, yes, that is the guy that just got fired from the Lakers after having a horrible bike accident. He catches on with the Pacers shortly thereafter, takes them to the playoffs that one time. After that season, their big center is going to be a free agent. He's going to end up going to Cleveland, signing a big contract that they cannot afford. So he needs to find a new center. He goes to the Portland Trail Blazers, a team that he had previously been an assistant coach of. There's an old center there. His name's Tom Owens. And he's fine. But Jack McKinney is so convinced that because he understands his system, again, if you've been watching Winning Time, honestly, this kind of works with the characterization that they have done of Jack McKinney. He's just a guy that fits in his system so well, he needs to have Tom Owens. So he trades Indiana's 1984 first-round pick to Portland Trail Blazers. Convinced that he's going to be able to get the team to the playoffs. The team is trying to get sold at that point. This will drive the value up. A better owner will find them. Actually, they missed the playoffs the next 3 years. Tom Owens only plays that one season. He doesn't even eclipse 30 minutes a game. It's a horrible trade. Jack McKinney does worse every year until getting fired ahead of the 1984 draft. So he is not even the coach anymore when that pick tied the worst team in the league, Indiana Pacers, is not going to be the Indiana Pacers pick. It's going to be a coin flip real quick to determine who gets it, them or the team that held the first pick last year, the Houston Rockets. Coin flip goes the Rockets' way. So it's a second overall pick that goes to Portland Trail Blazers. And the Rockets last year, actually, because of that injury that Sam Bowie took, he got kind of set off from all of his peers. Those guys that he'd grown up with, Steve Stepanovich, Ralph Sampson, they all went last year. Ralph Sampson went first overall to Houston Rockets. Steve Stepanovich is with the Indiana Pacers. So they're out of the equation. But the Rockets enter this, and the Rockets like what they've seen in recent, two big man lineups in college, for instance, with this Kentucky Wildcat team. And so there's this big man in the draft, Hakeem Olajuwon, the dream. He's absolutely
at the time, Akeem. There was no
Akeem, yes. Thank you. Akeem, at this time, he has
Akeem.
not started adding the H. That'll be a little bit later on, ironically, after he goes to H-Town. But Hakeem Olajuwon is what Houston decides they want to do. With the second pick, the Portland Trail Blazers just got a guard, Clyde Drexler, who's going to go on to have a Hall of Fame career. And so they're convinced they need to get a center. They almost, coming into this draft, actually trade their first round pick, their second overall pick, to the Houston Rockets for Ralph Sampson, which is interesting because then a big man would not have probably gone with the second overall pick. But the Portland Trail Blazers decide they have to get a big man. Hakeem Olajuwon being gone, they take the next best big man, Sam Bowie. And if you really needed a big man, I guess you could do that, and you ignore the person that goes third overall, the person who maybe could have gone second overall to the Rockets to pair with Hakeem Olajuwon. And that's Michael Jordan, which I've been trying to avoid saying up until this moment, because as Diaz alluded to, Sam Bowie is everyone's favorite number 2 pick ever, because he is the person taken before Michael Jordan. Now, you may say, James, you just said that Hakeem Olajuwon is also taken from him. Yes, but Hakeem Olajuwon did other things. The problem with Sam Bowie, it's the same problem as with Ryan Leaf. If you're described as the person who got drafted before somebody else, you didn't do anything.
It's funny you bring up Ryan Leaf because I remember when I was like about 7 years old, I was the quarterback for my flag football team. And my coach called me, "You're like a little Ryan Leaf out there." At the time, I didn't know how to take it. I was like, "Oh, he was like the number one pick like 2 years ago." And now, with the benefit of hindsight, I recognize my coach was saying that I sucked.
That or he thought you were on drugs and, just running around going crazy. But
Listen, I mean, my mom used to slip a little extra something in my Capri Suns. I can't confirm what it was. I don't really know. A lot of those games are a little blurry.
Wait, have we seen your birth certificate recently, Diaz?
Yeah, I am 12. I'm holding it up.
to be fair to Ryan Leaf, after some tough times, he sounds like he's a chill dude now. So don't want to hate on Ryan Leaf, but obviously the drafting before Peyton part has not been great.
Didn't work out great. Great.
And in Sam Bowie's case, what's rough is that not only is he drafted before Michael Jordan, he is also drafted before Charles Barkley with the 5th overall pick to the Sixers. Sam Perkins with the 4th overall pick, who, has an okay career and had just played at UNC as a national champion with Michael Jordan. The number 7 overall pick, that's Alvin Robertson to the Spurs. Number 9, you got Otis Thorpe, who's an all-star and eventual champion with the Rockets. Number 11 is Kevin Willis, who holds the record for most games played without making the Hall of Fame. And then at 16, John Stockton. Terrible person, good basketball player, admittedly. All of those people are taken after Sam Bowie, who is famous for being taken before all of those people and not a whole lot else. Part of this is, Sam Bowie will acknowledge, he wasn't entirely honest about how he was feeling, how his legs were doing, and he kind of hides it his rookie season. He makes the all-rookie team his first year, and then over the next 4 years, he plays 68 out of 238 possible games. That first season, he plays 38 before he now fractures his right tibia. Then the next year, plays only 5 games after coming back from injury before, nope, broke one of the legs again. The next season, he is warming up before a game and thinking, actually, I think there's something wrong. Doesn't want to be taken out on a stretcher this time like he has before. He got a hook shot from Clyde Drexler the year before when he had gone down after 5 games. Clyde Drexler described that one. I remember seeing part of the bone sticking out. He was beating the floor with his fist. So he's gone out bad before. This time he decides to walk out. And immediately after he walks out, the medical staff evaluates him. It's like, oh yeah, you can't play for another season. This healed improperly. In fact, we're going to have to put 3 screws into your bone. Whoops, 2 of those screws didn't heal properly. We need to put 3 more screws in your bone. Whoops, we need to actually put in a new bone graft after that. Ends up only playing by the end of this 5th season about 130 games in 5 seasons altogether with Portland Trail Blazers. And after that, he'll go to the New Jersey Nets. He'll get traded there for peanuts, basically, and have a couple decent seasons where he averages around 30 minutes a game. He has a couple good bench years for the Lakers, but none of that compares to some of the careers that we were just listing there before. In fact, some of the best career comps for him, Chris Birdman Anderson, JaVale McGee, and Nerlens Noel. Yeah, sure, fine players. None of them should be number 2 overall picks in the draft. And so Sam Bowie, maybe to some extent a victim of those lies that he told, but as he defended himself at the time, look, man, I had people to feed, needed that money, knew I could get drafted higher. And of course, since then, the Trailblazers have learned their lesson. They have never again drafted a center with any kind of long-term knee problems ahead of a potential Hall of Famer. Love him being this central figure with so many big men kind of at the tail end of this particular era of big men. And let's not feel too bad for Sam Bowie, because Sam Bowie had one other lifetime passion that he found in college that he is still involved with today. In the state of Kentucky, horse racing is big. And there's a particular kind of horse racing called harness racing. Now, harness racing, you basically ride modern-day chariots called sulkies. They're these little carts, and you tie them to a harness on a horse, and you race these horses around the same kinds of tracks that you would do a horse race. So it is just a modern-day chariot race of tiny little jockeys in their tiny little carts following behind racehorses. One point in college, someone convinced him to go out to the racetrack and check this out. And Sam Bowie just fell in love. The guy was with him, saw, hey, you like this. Do you want to take this for a go? They fit his 7'1" frame inside one of these tiny little, like, Amish buggy sulkies. And he went around one lap He said, I fell in love. He has bought horses. He owns several championship horses. He has in the low millions of career earnings. And he has just been this massive figure in Kentucky harness racing ever since then. In 2002, the last thing that kind of solidified, I think, his college case is he is one of the numbers that is retired. Kentucky Wildcats. His number 31 hangs from the rafters along with a couple other members of that team that made it to the Final Four. And he appreciated that, allowed him to look back on the highlights of the college career that was before the NBA career that never quite happened.
Fun fact, the Harness Racing Hall of Fame is 15 minutes from where I grew up. It is in Goshen, New York.
You want to make sure that when you hit the Baseball Hall of Fame, you can hit the Harness Racing Hall of Fame on the same day. They understand that it's a package deal, and you need to be able to get it all in there.
100%.
How far is Belmont from you, Xavier?
Belmont is in no, that's Long Island.
Okay, I was gonna say I have no clue about the way New York is laid out. So I know New York City, and then the rest of New York. It's like that's how I gotta think of New York.
Yeah, Belmont is Long Island by where like the Islanders. I think it's like literally like right where the Islanders are. We're like right by UBS Arena now. New York is big.
The Derby is coming up. It's the weekend following this episode's release, correct?
I've maintained this for years. I don't care about the Derby. The reason that the Preakness is the single best day of horse racing, it is not exclusively because it was held in Baltimore for nearly a century. That's part of it, but that's not the only reason. The reason the Preakness is the best is because it's the only day in the world where everyone knows the one horse to root for. Because there's always someone that has won the Kentucky Derby. So the Triple Crown is always in play for one horse. Let's be honest. We don't give a shit in the Preakness about any horse that didn't win the Kentucky Derby. So the whole world is guaranteed one horse to get behind. And that is why the Preakness is the single best day of horse racing in the world.
Fair enough. I'll give you that.
But I mean, yeah, I'm sure Sam Bowie would agree with me. We can ask him sometime if we decide to induct him. So you know what? Because I want to meet Sam Bowie so badly, let's go ahead and discuss our three candidates. What are we thinking, fellas?
All right, so I'm just gonna come out and say it. I think Jim Montgomery fits the criteria the best here because Jim Montgomery was never expected to have, a professional career, was not drafted, not because of any injuries or anything like that, but just because he wasn't expected to be a good NHL player. But he spent 4 years in Maine, becoming a legend for an entire state, winning a state, their first national title in any sport ever. I think Jason White also fits fairly well because of Oklahoma, born and bred. Even though it was injuries that probably kept him from a pro career, I feel like the impact he had on Oklahoma was great even without the title. Sam Bowie I like a lot, but Sam Bowie did end up playing 500 games in the NBA and is more about who was drafted after Sam Bowie than anything. It's less of Sam Bowie, look at all the great things he did in college, and more of Sam Bowie was a good player who had lots of bad injuries both in college and in professionals and had a long career full of injuries, but is more known for the fact that like 9 Hall of Famers were drafted right before or after him rather than, anything else.
So here's where I'm conflicted, right? Because if I'm going to advocate for my own guy, the category is the 4 best years of your life. Both of your guys did go on to play professionally. Jason White did not. So he did truly peak in college. However, I would also counter by saying, to Sam Bowie's effect, if we go back to the genesis, the bar test again, Sam Bowie, the average American sports fan knows who Sam Bowie is.
There's brand recognition.
There's certainly brand recognition. That recognition doesn't exist with Jim Montgomery. And most likely, other than like college football diehards, does not exist with Jason White. So that would be the thing that I would say for Bowie. But I also do love, Montgomery truly, the natural hat trick from down 4-2 to up 5-4 in the third period of the national championship of your last game as a collegiate athlete, I do think is outstanding. So,
yeah,
I just said pros for all three. I am torn in 3 directions right now.
I'll agree. I think Sam Bowie's out of it. After hearing your two, like, Sam Bowie definitely, to some extent, more notable for his collegiate accomplishments, but you guys, I think, found ones that fit even better, like, exclusively college. I'm going to concede on Sam Bowie. Both of these fucking great. The biggest pro for Jim Montgomery, to me, is that he decides college was so good, he does have to go back and coach. And he's going to do it for, well, sorry, who does he coach for again? Please clarify that.
University of Denver.
Okay, so yeah, still, you were saying, like, it's almost no one outside of this stuff, and then he goes off in Colorado and wins one. Do you know offhand how many people won as a player and coach? I can't imagine very many.
I don't have that. I don't think it's a lot.
The one other thing, this one I'll say is a knock for Jason White. There have also been a lot of really good Oklahoma quarterbacks since then. And that's not necessarily his fault, but there has been a legacy of very good Oklahoma quarterbacks since then. There's no shortage of Oklahoma Heisman quarterbacks.
You got Bradford, you got Kyler. I mean, it's two Heismans.
Did Baker not win Heisman?
Baker did win a Heisman. No, you're right. Forgot about Baker.
And I mean, Jalen Hurts was in consideration for his year at Oklahoma. And that's all the last 5 years. So I'll go ahead, if we're going to start trying to stake this down, I will stake my vote this time, I think, to Jim Montgomery.
It sounds like
also
Xavier.
Voting for Jim Montgomery.
All right, then I'm gonna have to protest vote for my boy Jason. But
I've come to really respect the protest vote recently. I'm all for it. Like, keep the record stating that. Absolutely.
With that being said, while my vote has been overruled, I do respect democracy. I respect the opinions of my esteemed colleagues, and so without further ado, to the man that never won the Hoagie, but did win the hearts of these three panelists and did win 2 national championships, first as a player with his natural hat trick for the Black Bears, and then eventually as a coach for the Denver, whatever the fuck their nickname was.
Pioneers.
Pioneers.
The Pioneers.
I thought it was the Broncos, but that's the football team, obviously. But anyway, all of this to say, Mr. Jim Montgomery, most important contribution being the Legion of Doom nickname, in my unbiased Philadelphia opinion. Mr. Jim Montgomery, welcome into the Hall of Guy. Congratulations, Jim. Montgomery.
Hooray.
And with that, another episode of Remember That Guy. Plenty of good playoff basketball to watch right now. We hope you're enjoying that. We hope you're enjoying as we get into the swing of things with baseball. Plenty of good minor league stuff going on here in Maryland. So many good minor league teams. Ooh boy.
Listen, I mean, let's support your local minor league baseball team, especially now that they are kind of treating their players like human beings. I think it's good progress. I think they've come a long way.
Yeah. Anything else to add here at the end?
The Jets drafted Breece Hall, which means they got the number 1 corner, the number 1 wide receiver, and the number 1 running back in the same draft, which makes me very excited. And the Ravens,
Skill Central, baby.
The Ravens drafted David Ajabo, who I think is going to be fantastic when he comes back from his torn Achilles.
Well, that's breaking news for me. So here's to that. That sounds like a pretty Ravens pick.
I mean, the leaps that they've made with the Achilles recovery process as well. Like, Achilles used to be a death sentence, and I really don't think it is anymore.
Brianna Stewart's made it to what, 2 finals since then?
Yup. And
she's so good.
4 national championships, and I think she was MOP all 4 years as well.
I cannot wait for the Tulsa Shockers to win the Fantasy WNBA League.
It's in Philadelphia Freedom, baby. If goddamn Kathy fucking Engelbert will not give me my team, I will make my team in this fantasy league, which all you listeners can expect weekly updates on how our 3 teams are doing in our WNBA fantasy league.
Do you guys want to hear the really terrible joke I have about the Tulsa Shockers?
I'm ready. I love bad jokes.
They run a zone defense. 2 in the paint, 1 in the taint. Anyway, I've been James.
I've been the very special guest, Xavier.
And I'm Diaz. And as I said earlier this episode, fuck Toronto.
This is just a game.